Never mind. Carry on.
The traditional lands acknowledgement. We acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we are meeting today. Did everyone receive a copy of the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I guess do we need a motion to have that accepted as is? Or
Generally, yeah, I move that we adopt as presented.
Okay. I guess the receipt of the minutes. Everyone received the previous minutes. Are they good as presented?
Yes. Nodding heads here. Yes.
Okay. Does that one require an official vote on, Gary?
No, just received. Yep.
Okay. Perfect. Under old business, I guess we have the Kootenai Lake Geothermal Project update from Gord. That was back in March, I believe.
Yeah. Well, I can give you a quick update.
Sure.
We've completed essentially all of our geological and geochemical field activities. That wrapped up at the end of August. We did pretty much what we had planned to do with an expansion over onto the other side of the lake. And the reason for that is it's kind of stemming from our engagement with the Yakanuki, and so I'll backtrack. We had I think a pretty productive meeting with the Yakanuki earlier in the summer, and it was really set up to try and get them to agree to allow us to sample the hot springs at Ainsworth. And then the conversation kind of went further. We had previously spoke about giving a presentation to Chief and Council. Their advice was this project really needs to be further along and be much more tangible, if you will, before it goes to Chief and Council. It's too early to do that. But Curtis Wallum basically told us that the Chief and Council know what we're doing, and they have the authority to kind of work with us, and they have agreed to work with us. And so through this conversation, we talked about Ainsworth specifically, and the question was asked, when it comes to drilling, would you consider ever drilling a well over here? And that really kind of got us thinking about how we want to manage the risk and perhaps spread the risk around and put it into 2 or 3 different drill targets instead of just into one area specifically. And so we said we were open to that, but we really felt we were a little bit behind on the geology. And so we spent some time this summer really kind of vetting and verifying the existing mapping that's been done and published for that side of the lake. Because of all of the little mining operations that have occurred over there since the 1800s, there's been a lot of geology done, and it's actually pretty well understood, I would say. But so anyhow, we have followed that up with some geochem work. We did a first batch of geochem in June and a second batch at the end of August, which included a number of samples at Ainsworth, but Ainsworth Hot Springs specifically. And that was interesting because we got their maintenance. Curtis arranged for the maintenance guy to meet us, and he kind of explained how the system kind of all works. And we got a decent sample over there, including some of these stable isotopes that we've talked about before. And we did this at Dewar Creek in the spring. We did helium and neon, as well as strontium, sulfate, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, etc. And so we have all of that now, and it's all gone to the lab. Most of it's gone to the University of Calgary, and they have 2 labs there, one conventional and one in their physics group, and they do the isotope work. And then the specialized stuff has gone to the University of Ottawa. They're the only ones in Canada that do helium, and it's not inexpensive. I think it's like $400 a sample or something. We did get results back from the Deer Creek samples that we took, which was interesting. It indicates that it's crustal and likely radiogenic heat source, given its proximity to the Fry Creek batholith. And what that means is that there's heat generated through radioactive decay of these, of thorium, potassium, and uranium that are present in the batholith. And so that was interesting. And so that's really the only results that we've got so far. We did a bunch of geologic mapping in all the areas where we had planned, including the Ainsworth side. And so the one thing that was disappointing this year is that we didn't get the Geoscience BC funding that we had requested, and that was $50,000 of our total budget. And it's not kind of a final answer yet. They went to Energy Mines and Low Carbon Innovation and did a special request for funding for our project back in June, and we still haven't heard. And so now it's kind of the 11th hour, and we're now starting to talk about the funding that we will need to do what we couldn't get done this year. And that'll likely be 2025. And what that would include is the geophysics, the ERT, and potentially magnetometer. And that's really kind of the final piece to define where you want to drill the well. Right? You want to drill into fluid-saturated bedrock. And so we did do some ERT up in Crawford Creek with UVic last year, but it was a really kind of the first look, and it should have a second phase with more detail and a deeper look. And that was what we had planned to do. So that still needs to be done before we can finalize some drill locations. So that's kind of where we're at. We're looking at a couple of different funding options. One of them is Economic Trust of the Southern Interior, and the other one is a second application to REDIP. Both have October intakes. The ETSI one is relatively modest. It's $20,000 cap for a small community, unless we can demonstrate that it's more regional and there's Indigenous involvement, which I think we can do. So there may be a case to argue for up to 50,000 with them, and then the REDIP one is 100, and that would be more than enough to do everything that we had hoped to do this year, including doing some economic modeling and business development, business planning, putting together a business plan, I should say. So yeah. Any questions?
I have a couple. I just wondering, Leah did join us. So Leah was joining for a bit of the conversation about Imagine Kootenai in a bit, but also she's been involved in some of these grant applications. And so one question I have, through the chair, Richard, sorry, do you need someone to help with these grant applications, like ETSI-BC or REDIP or stuff like that? Because not only has Leah worked on some of these applications, but also works with Jen Comer, who's been a good guiding source, within the ministry. What box do you want to tick? How much detail do they want? What sort of letters of support matter the most? Is this something that...
Possibly. We have been successful with REDIP before, and with ETSI, we've had some good conversations with them recently, one which was actually facilitated by Geoscience BC. They set up the call, and I was really pleased to see how strongly they endorsed our project and wanted to work with ourselves and ETSI potentially on an application. So I think that, we still need to kind of iron out some details about how we're going to package it and present it. But I think right at this point, I think we're probably good. But
can I follow up, Richard? Another question then? Or
yeah, by all means, Gary.
So there's discussions all the time about energy and clean energy and energy futures. And I managed to sit in just yesterday morning on a spiel from Minister Josie Osborne, energy mines and innovation. Mm-hmm. And, her and her staff touched on some of the things we've been seeing going for the last couple of years, transitions into other energy sources. BC Hydro had his call for energy out in the spring. Some of us looked at that just like, whoa, what's this? And then, you get a minimum, like so many huge megawatt hour or megawatt capacity requirement for them to even look at something. And they're well underway and they're reviewing the final stage of their applications, and somebody's going to get some contract for electricity supply agreement, I guess, from BC Hydro sometime this winter, and they're going to start launching on big projects. Myself and several other people on the call, it was really refreshing to see people from the island or people from elsewhere in the interior saying, what about littler projects? Because every time we talk about big energy projects, then we need big money on transmission lines. Mm-hmm. And they were talking just massive, like BC Hydro, it sounds like they have, I'm going to say 30 odd billion, but I should actually find the exact, of the next billion, 10-year projections of what money they're going to have to put into transmission and distribution and other projects to meet some of their targets. Like, it's massive money. And it makes more sense to me to have hundreds of modest projects in localized areas where you can use existing distribution to get that extra electricity or whatever energy form, and then thousands and tens of thousands of maybe rooftop, charge your own car and don't even be connected to the grid. Just have a second set of batteries now permitted, store the energy, transfer it to your car, and not worry about taxing the grid. So I'm wondering when, and it's the same I'd ask with FCM, when do we start going back to some of these contacts? So I think it would be within the ministry. Jessica McElroy sounds like, from the people who are talking, the person to talk to about when are they going to start taking in expressions of interest for little projects, the few millions of dollars instead of the hundreds of millions projects. So this is something I think we've got to keep our nose to the ground on. And then the other question is, because you talk about the business plan, do we want to go back to FCM Green Municipal Fund? They said they can help out. I know you'd said before that you don't quite have enough data as to sort of what would you get temperature volume. Mm-hmm. Do we go back to them this winter?
Well, possibly. One of the things that we've been kind of working on lately is just this idea of putting together more of a portfolio of drill targets. So there's Crawford Creek, and there's also potentially Rydell and potentially Ainsworth. And so now it's taking on more of a regional perspective and not just Crawford Bay.
Yeah.
And I had sent you a note late Friday
about the profile.
And I did kind of scratch together some stuff from the Stronger Together document, which was helpful. But our presentation to Cascade Institute has actually been moved to tomorrow. And the idea there is they've got this ultra deep geothermal initiative. I might have talked about it a little bit before, where they're going to drill either 4 or 6, I can't remember, deep geothermal tests in different areas. And initially I was told that some of them were pretty set and there was a couple that were tentative. But they've now come out and produced what they call their roadmap to deep geothermal. And the one site in BC that they show in their grid is Mount Meagher. And the problem with Mount Meagher is there's no infrastructure there. And yeah, there's some hot water at Mount Meagher, but it's challenged from an infrastructure perspective. So I don't know that they've completely ruled us out. But our presentation tomorrow is going to be part on ultra deep geothermal and part on this accelerating community energy transition, ACET, which is an initiative that was, it's mostly UVic, but it's also Rural Roads. And Thomas Homer Dixon, who is the chair of the Cascade Institute, is on that panel or that board. And so we put together kind of a combined pitch, deep and the shallow community-based story. And so we're presenting to them tomorrow. And so what we've told them is this is more of a regional initiative. We have a portfolio of projects. Every one of them has thermal water already identified, and they're testing each of them different play types, if you will. And so it's kind of spreading the risk around. And so we'll see what kind of response we get from them. But they're obviously well-connected folks, and they've got quite a vision. Like, they're talking $500 million for this deep geothermal. So big dollars.
When you do the portfolio, we talked before about how on the sort of maps across Canada, there's also the Salmo hotspot in the cusp. Like, you can include something to say there's a cluster here that could be targets. And then it may be two other similar, formations or whatever.
Well, and we didn't, with our manpower and our budget, we didn't want to try and spread ourselves too thin, because it's every time you drop into a new area, there's a learning curve trying to understand the local geology. But the Geological Survey of Canada, Steve Grasby, has worked on Mount Meager for years, and he's now kind of published his final report on Mount Meager. And he's now, in June, come out with an abstract, and he's looking at the potential of radiogenic heat. And specifically what I was talking about with Deer Creek. And so there's an element of our story that I think is tied to that. I think at depth there's a possibility, there's a connection between Crawford Bay Stock and the Fly Creek batholith. There seems to be on regional magnetics, there's something at depth. Anyhow, all of this is pretty conceptual, but there is some big thinkers that are going to be doing some work on the interior, looking at this as a heat source. And the reason why I say that is that's the kind of thing that's at play in the cusp. You're on the edge of the main Columbia Valley Fault or the Columbia River Fault, but you're also on the edge of that large batholith fault. And so I think those are probably all radiogenic, even though I don't think anyone's done the work to determine that. But
just part of what I don't understand is, when you say deep, are they saying they don't care if there's fracturing and the water is rising and it's only 500 meters down? Are they saying like go down 10 kilometers?
5 kilometers.
5 kilometers. So they really don't care. You've been looking at fractures and all this stuff, but how you get at it easy.
Yeah, they're talking about
solid bedrock where.
Yeah, solid bedrock where, the deeper you go, you're not concerned so much as the heat being there. That's going to be a given. So it's more about developing the drilling and completions technology to deal with those temperatures and pressures and depths.
Just to back up what I said, the minister's words that there's 700 million in new BC hydro efficiency investments, that's in the near term, only 700 million. And the 10-year horizon for BC Hydro's capital projects is 36 billion. We thought Site C was a lot of money. It was 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 or 20, whatever. But this is 36 more billion in the next 10 years, which is quite a bit of money.
And so what kind of projects would be earmarked to spend that kind of money?
That's what I'm like. That's why I wrote it down. I don't know. That's like 3 more Site Cs or 2 more Site Cs. Not sure.
Anyhow, it's an evolving story, and I think that, the work we're doing is all good. We just have to try and stay focused on kind of the practical, pragmatic, direct use application and try and get the funding to test it. Yeah. And that's really our objective.
Perfect. Thanks for the update, Gord. It's good to see that that's still progressing forward. So, for something to come to fruition. So, does anyone have any questions, or Gary did? So. I'm good. Okay. Well, thanks, Gord. Under new business, I guess, Gary, you're going to provide an overview regarding the Imagine Kootenai program.
Sure. I pirated some slides from two other sources to give a presentation at East Kootenai. And then I did a really crude update. So I don't know if anybody can kind of share those. There's only like 6 slides and they're really high-level bullet points. Christine or Robin or anybody, can you show what I sent? That was the attachment to my email an hour ago.
I can, yeah, there they are.
Yeah. So, these are just high point things. And I should start by saying that Gina asked a very good question. She said, what's happened to the site? It's like it's been scrubbed, and it has. Because there were so many things that nobody was quite sure what's current, what's old, what's sold. So anyway, this Invest Kootenai used to be Imagine Kootenai, currently Imagine Kootenai, used to be Invest Kootenai. The idea is that people can list a business opportunity. It doesn't have to be, developed business. It can just be an empty building or a raw property or something. Some areas, you won't find a lot of industrial sites even available. Just make people aware. So if you could maybe flip through the next slide. So this, thanks. My computers, I don't know if it's the internet connection. Anyway, so it's intended to be the entire Kootenai Boundary region, which would go Grand Forks across the Alberta border up through Golden, Revelstoke, and all along the U.S. border. So we included in, other than just showing listings of businesses for buyers and sellers, to make a connection, also talking or showcasing a little bit about what communities are like. If you live in a certain area, each community can tell its own story. So you can say, well, in Kootenai Lake, you can ice fish in the morning, and you can open water fish in the afternoon, and maybe you can golf that same day, depending on just, Duck Lake, Kootenai Lake, and maybe Rindell's open early that year. So sort of the opportunities, things you can do. And you've heard most of this. Can we flip to the next one, maybe? Thank you. So, and the current partners are pretty stable, I guess, still. It's still City of Nelson with areas E and F, Revelstoke and its surrounding area, electoral area B, Golden and surrounding area A, Creston Valley, ABC in town, Upper Columbia Valley, Radium in through there, Canal Flats. The boundary region, there's a cluster. The cusp is on the cusp, pun intended, of being not sure what they're going to do. A lot of communities say, well, we can do something on our own better or differently, and that's fair. And then CASO and Area D still. And more recently, the new coordinator is working for Cranbrook as their economic development officer. And the rural area surrounding Cranbrook, which is quite a cluster of people, that's Rob Gay's area, in East Kootenai are also talking about maybe joining. So could we have the next slide? So, okay, this is out of date because this is at least a year old, but over the decade and a half, there's been shy of 3,000 investors listed, or 3,000 investors indicating interest, 1,600 plus listings, thousands of inquiries, 10,000s of searches. And as they say, all the numbers are out of date by more than a year, but it has been very active in the past. Could we have next slide? So what happened though, last year we had a big conversation about scarcity of funding for some of these initiatives and decided to discontinue using an external consultant, which was Calgary-based and half Calgary-Toronto-based, and decided to go up more volunteer or supported by local economic practitioners, economic development practitioners. So we have sort of set part of the sort of like steering function is set up through Tom Thompson, Nelson Chamber of Commerce, which is supported by Electoral CNF and Community Futures, who used to actually host this partnership. And then we have a lot of sort of the financial and keeping track of the numbers, contracts, and the like being supported by Pete Burke, who's in the Upper Columbia. So that's 2 rural areas up there, Radium and all through there, the Hot Springs area. And then we have hired a new coordinator, Stacy Brensrud, who has worked in the Kootenays and Columbia quite a bit, currently in Cranbrook. She's hands-on, trying to talk to people, make sure we're getting what we need in terms of, does the site work? How do you put information on the site? How do you update information and the like? And then the partnership has retained the same web designer who's been working at Fixes for a little while here now, Maverick Designs, out of the Spokane Valley, to just sort of go through page by page every website and figure what hasn't been updated. When it was under the consultant, it seemed like there's a lot of talk of great new initiatives and stuff we might do, visionary stuff, but the groundwork to make sure that website was functional, maybe it wasn't always done. So they've very systematically been updating everything. And we've also updated the memorandum of understanding to partners. So in our partnership, if it's ABC in Creston, plus Yakanuki has expressed interest as a partner, Leah is in the best position as somebody who's funded through our Economic Action Partnership. There are 2 services, Economic Development S107, that's us, and S108, which is areas BC in the town of Creston. So Leah is the most knowledgeable about what's going on. Her and I haven't spent as much time as maybe we could about, we need to do a reboot now. And that's sort of, I don't know if there's one more slide. If you could go to the next slide. I don't think it says anything in particular. Yeah, sort of the potential from what's here. We think there's a chance to expand membership. We've changed how the fee structure works. If you're a member and say you pay in $10,000, 4,000 of that helps Stacy and the website consultant do the little bit of background work. And then all the rest of the money is allocated towards whoever your local contact is, Leo or whoever is knowledgeable in the area, to make sure you're up to date. You want to update your community profile. You want to put listings on. You want to follow up with anybody who has questions about the area. So right now, what I think we need, and I haven't been able to talk to Lee about this yet, is to do something we did a half a dozen years ago. And at that time, we hired Bronca Ondowski. We hired Bronca because she had the interest and she had good contacts with real estate agents and people just sort of in that business realm to say aggressively just sort of go everywhere you think you're aware of somebody who's selling a business or has an interest in investing, and update and repopulate our section of this website. Because as they say, it has been pretty well scrubbed. And so the conversation for today, and maybe if there's any decisions, doesn't have to be today, is as Area A, do we want to either ask Leah or anyone else to focus on what do we have in Area A that's being neglected or not supported in terms of trying to get these commercial, industrial, whatever opportunities on this site for people to see. And if we want to do it, whether or not areas B and C and Creston want to do it right now, I think if we take the lead, then we'll say everything needs to be updated. So I don't know, there's always a lot for sale. And the Creston Radio, last week or so, the news broadcast or whatever is just going on about this 14 vacant storefronts in Creston on downtown now again. And that's what we had a decade ago, about 14 vacant stores. So I mean, there's work to be done here. Anyway, I don't know if people have any thoughts. If you have any thoughts about send separately, if you know businesses, people who should list, opportunities anywhere within the region that should be on this site. That's the blurb.
Well, we're getting ready to list Terra Shanti, so maybe we should put that on there.
Well, those are the sorts of things. And I think what we'll find, like Lois had listed, right? And then she had, there's off and on potential sales. And so things kind of go off and on. And then there's so much complication sometimes in this rural world about getting a deal actually closed, and without going into details there. but some people will be aware of some of the details here. Did it become stale in terms of, it's not an emerging investment opportunity where somebody says, yeah, we're serious, we want to get out of this business, make me an offer. We need those ones where it's like, yeah, we're doing other stuff now. This business is for sale. We're not just kicking the tires. When we moved here 30 years ago, before we moved here, we just camped. I'd look at the listings. 100 people say they're selling for $1 million. You know, not a million, but they weren't selling their places. They were just seeing if somebody had too much money. But we can get someone to aggressively go around and try and get listings on this site again. And whether it's right now or just raise awareness that if you're thinking of selling within the year, you know that here's an opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's a really good resource. I think it needs to be utilized more, and I think our little town is in need of some way to get the word out about all of these great little spots that could bring tourists to.
And so how would prospective buyers or interested parties know about Imagine Cooking? And how does that word get out?
It's linked through Invest BC and Invest Canada. And the Imagine Kootenai, the Invest Kootenai model that we used, also showcasing a little bit of what else is going on in the community. Because, you know, you get to a point in your life where you just don't want a job. You actually want to enjoy where you live and have things you want to do, you know, if possible, without driving 4 hours. I mean, when we lived in, you know, towards UBC in Vancouver, on a Friday, we'd talk about going somewhere, and I'd say to Tina, well, if we're going to go in the interior, let's wait till way after supper, till everybody's at the hockey game or wherever they're going, the traffic's died down. Like, don't even think of leaving Vancouver till 7 p.m. because there's nothing but a mess of people from 4 or 5 o'clock onwards. You can't go anywhere. Yeah. So that's the key to a lot of people. They say, I want to invest and do something that I know how to do, but I want to live somewhere specific as well. Yeah. So our model of emphasizing lifestyle and opportunities and what it's like to live here was really well received when the provincial sites and stuff looked at it and said, wow, this is what people want. Not everybody, but all of our investment opportunities are pretty unique, right? So you're going to get unique people that have more criteria than just needing a certain return on investment. Mm-hmm. One certain return on investment, I guess you can go to Abbotsford or Chilliwack or Surrey and probably see the stats and know how many hours a day, hours a week you're going to have to put in and what kind of money you're going to make on your $3 million investment. But that's not us. I see people coming here not so worried about the best return on investment, foolishly, more worried about enjoying where they live. So maybe give it some thought before the next one. If I'm able to talk to Leah, if we want to find someone, and even if we revisit it with Bronco or somebody and say, do we want a targeted outreach? What is this? You have a property or a business to list. Look at all the real estate listing. We're not in competition with real estate. We're not taking commission. We're not taking money. All of their contact information can be right there. Just this is a way that people have a window in. It's unique as compared to just going to the real estate listings.
And so as a business, I mean, for us, we're not selling the business, we're selling the property.
Yeah.
Is there a fee for getting the listing up and running?
No, this is part of where we look at economic development being supported, subsidized by local government, just enough to sort of raise a collective awareness. There's no point trying to get in any position where you're competing with realtors. That just we create bad blood. You want to pay somebody to do work for you? Professional realtor. You want to scan the landscape and see what's out there? This is one portal. So, but it does cost money to make it work. So that's tax-based. Well, it's not all just property tax-based. We've been successful in getting provincial money and other money to help kick in. So. Anyway, just a refresher on IK. Back to you, Chair. Are we out of items?
I think we are. We have some public time, I guess. So is the next one on the agenda? Do we have anyone else?
Volume a little better. there's Observer on his public. They may just have a recording running. I guess the only other thought on my mind is for next meeting, we should start talking about budget. And we are part of Economic Action Partnership, and the contract with Kootenai Employment Services to deliver quite a few projects you're working on right now it has an expiry date of December 31st. So there'll be a conversation over the next couple of months as to what we'd keep doing through KES. Do we want other, Creston Chamber of Commerce has suggested some interest in maybe taking the lead in some of the projects. There's things you don't see all the time. There's physician recruitment, which is EDC out of that end. There's the tourism info booth, which is funded and actually staffed through Regional District right now. Town of Creston has been a service provider for a lot of economic development initiatives for a period of time. Years back, tourism was pretty homegrown, but now we have the MRDT organizations, both Nelson, Kootenai Lake, and the Creston Valley. So there's sort of a shift in emphasis on some of the tourism promotion. So what we would want to contribute through that partnership and what KES is able to deliver, that's something we should talk about in the next couple of months. There is...
Hi, Gary. Sorry, yeah. I just wanted to quickly add on something about Imagine Kootenai, if that's okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, this sound is a little sketchy. So just to add on to the previous conversation, so I just want to point out some of the statistics that came through in the last quarterly report that we received. So Imagine Kootenai has been doing quite a good job of generating some interest in the Kootenays, and from the last quarter we can see that, and there hasn't been aggressive advertising for the last bit, but despite that, there was still 22,000 site visits to the website, and currently there are 5,600 users registered. And we can also see where investors and website users come from. So most people are registered as potential investors. Some people identify as working in banking and finance. A lot of people have indicated on the website that they're interested in outdoor recreation opportunities. So we can kind of see people from the larger centers, and that's what we know as well, that they're mainly from Vancouver, followed by Calgary, Edmonton, wanting to probably escape what they have in those much larger centers, and to enjoy the lifestyle that you can have in the Kootenays. And about 53% of the users on the website have indicated that they're interested in investment opportunities. So I think that's quite useful data to just get a picture of what interest is out there. And again, I want to add that that's without any aggressive marketing, because as Gary mentioned, there have been a lot of transitions over the last year or so with Imagine Kootenai. So the plan for the moment is just to focus on getting the website fully up to speed, and working out all of the kinks. And after that, there will be a much more aggressive marketing campaign to generate new interest. But this is just from existing ads that ran previously. So yeah, that might be helpful data as well. And if there is interest from the commission, from the committee, I was going to suggest maybe that the EAP put on a presentation about Imagine Kootenai, perhaps in conjunction with the Kootenai Lake Chamber, just to provide some basic information. And again, that could help business owners who are thinking of seeing what interest there is for their business from outside investment. Is that something that you think there's an appetite for?
Yeah, I think so. And the chamber was dormant a little bit in the summer, but into the next couple of months would be the time to do it.
Okay. So I can, is Forrest Demon still the president of the Kootenai Lake Chamber?
Yeah, he's probably the best contact. Plus, he's also, as you know, stepped up for the EAP partnership.
Right.
So he's
yes.
best.
Okay. Okay, so I will coordinate with him, and yeah, we'll be sure to then forward any details to the committee.
Thanks, Leah.
Thank you.
I guess our next meeting, November the 12th, at 2:00. We can host that here at the resort again, Gary. We had the cops for kids today that were all on the bikes.
Yeah, I saw them. They had me pull over. A guy with flashing lights pulled me over, and I thought, I'm only going 60 something.
Over.
No, Richard, we're on the public site here. No, they were at Bayshore there as
Right.
Lockhart Park as it went by. Yeah,
Yeah.
did you see them?
Yeah, so we donate the meeting room. They stop and they have lunch here, and I think then they ride to Caswell. Anyhow, but yeah, we'll have the meeting room available for November the 12th. If you want to have it in person then. So, alrighty.
And the coffee will be on.
Yeah.
I'm not teasing Trish here, am I?
I was all ready to make French presses, but nobody requested one.
Just had one at home.
Alrighty. Well, if there's no other business or questions or concerns, make a motion to adjourn.
Sure.
I'll second that.
So moved. Yeah.
Alrighty. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Let's see if this is still working.
Thank you.
Or take it off 100% volume, or next time I call in from my office, I'll get in trouble. So, is this not? Well, I see what's happening. The volume thing is covering up the leave icon there.